interest lies in 20th century fiction and drama, Indian writing in English, narrative theory and communication skill. Dr. Bhatt has also served as the presiding officer of the International Complaint Committee (ICC) and coordinator of the Women's Cell of the Institute. Dr. Bhatt has authored and co-edited several books, including Resilience and Transformation for Global Restructuring 2022, published by Ethics International Press UK. She has published several research papers in national and international journals and in edited volumes. She has presented research papers at international conferences at Nanyang Technological University, La Trobe University, Oxford University, for which she was awarded travel grant by the University Grants Commission and by the concerned university. She has also presented papers at Charles University, Prague, Paksha University, Taichung, and at Dubai in person and at online international conferences at Germany, Turkey, and other countries. She has worked as a research project funded by the UGC, the British Council, UKIP III, and DSIR, New Delhi. Dr. Bhatt successfully coordinated a one-week global initiative academic network, GIA, in courts on South Asian literature and films, 1919-present in 1922. She is currently working on the project titled A Study of the Usability and Accessibility of Various ICT Tools Related to English Language Speaking and Reading Skills of Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder (ASD), funded by Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, Government of India. It is our privilege that she has agreed to give a inaugural technical session 1 on the sociology of dialects. With this, I would like to invite Bhatt ma'am to start with her first answer. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining.
Thank you, Dr. Krati. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashish and Dr. Krati, for inviting me to share my thoughts on this topic in this very prestigious ATAL Faculty Development Program. And it is a wonderful initiative on the part of Poornima Institute of Engineering and Technology, Jaipur, that you are hosting this event and you have such wonderful participation in this 6 days FDP. So thank you very much for inviting me. The topic that I'm going to speak on is sociology of dialects. And I will be sharing my presentation. Please let me know. I'll just share it on the screen. Let me know if it is visible. So is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay. So I'm going to speak on the sociology of dialects. And I'm going to, my session is for around an hour. So followed by the question and answer session. So I begin my presentation and I begin my discussion. So when we talk of India, the Indian linguistic space is extraordinary because we have 22 major languages of India in the 8th schedule of the Constitution. They have been recognized by the Indian Constitution. And there are also major literary languages in India, and a lot of writing is done in all these languages. So along with Sanskrit, we have the following 21 modern Indian languages. So we have Assamese, Bangla, Bodo, Dogri, Gujarati, Hindi, Kashmiri, Kannada, Konkani, Maithili, Malayalam, Manipuri, Marathi, Nepali, Odia, Punjabi, Tamil, Telugu, Santali, Sindhi, and Urdu. So initially in the 8th schedule of the Constitution, of the Indian Constitution, only 14 languages were included. But then later on, these languages, Bodo, Dogri, Konkani, Maithili, Manipuri, Nepali, Santali, and Sindhi were recognized later. But right now, Rajasthani languages have not been included in the major languages of the Constitution. So hopefully it will be done soon, because Rajasthani itself has a lot of recognition now, with a lot of literary writings being done and lot of writings being awarded and translated into different languages. So I think very soon it should be included in the Indian Constitution. According to the most recent census of 2011, 1369 rationalized mother tongues have been recognized, and 1474 names which were treated as unclassified and relegated to other mother tongue category. So we have lots of languages. So 1369 mother tongues have already been recognized, and there are others which are treated as unclassified because they are clubbed under languages which are almost similar in their rules and in their grammar. So there were so many languages, around 1500 languages, which could not be categorized into a major category, and so they were relegated to other mother tongue category. Among the 1369 rationalized mother tongues, which are spoken by 10,000 or more speakers, they are further grouped into appropriate set that resulted into total 121 languages. So 121 languages are already, uh, uh, known and understood and recognized. And of that, 22 are part of the 8th schedule of the Constitution of India. So because these have been included in the 8th schedule, they are called scheduled languages, and the other 99 are termed as total of other languages, also called non-scheduled languages, because they are not part of the scheduled languages, so they are called non-scheduled languages. So we have a rich array of languages in India, and some of them are recognized with their names and with their grammar and with their vocabulary, but there are others which are less recognized because either they don't have a proper written script or they don't have a proper grammar rules. So Indian languages reflect intricate levels of social hierarchy and caste. Uh, Individuals have in their speech repertoire a variety of styles and dialects appropriate to various social situations. So languages are, they open a world for the people. Each language, has its own set of values and cultures embedded in it, and also, levels of social hierarchy and caste. And dialects and styles and the kind of relationships that people have, they are reflected through the use of language. So speech is adapted in countless ways to reflect the specific social context and the relative standing of the speakers. So when we are using language, we adopt it according to the situation, according to our standing, according to the kind of relationship we have with the other person. And all languages have, most of them have this kind of, at least Indian languages have this kind of flexibility that they can be adapted to mold the situation. For example, when we use the word aap in Hindi, it has a specific context. We use it for specific situations between two people to indicate a specific kind of relationship between two people, where one person is considered either senior or, worthy of respect, okay, worthy of, kind of reverence. And when we say tum, then it is somebody who is a contemporary, somebody who has a less formal relationship with the speaker, and where, the aap is not required but tum can do. And then we have tu, where, which reflects another kind of relationship where people are either too friendly, or when we are talking to somebody who's smaller in age, or also, to indicate the speaker's kind of social status. So when he or she calls other two, then he wants maybe to indicate that he or she is superior. So through this single pronoun, we are able to, this pronoun encapsulates a lot of relationships, and the choice between the three, indicates the kind of relationship we want to highlight. So the word language is applied to a standardized form recognized as such over a large geographic area. So when we talk of the word language, it is a standardized form of language, and it is recognized over a large geographical area. Whereas the word dialect is used for the various forms of speech that are restricted to certain regions or castes, but are still regarded as forms of the same language. So dialects are the various forms of speech. There might be little minor changes in the language, but they are still forms of the main language. Okay, so we have one main language, but we have several dialects which have some overlap with the main language. So sometimes mutual intelligibility is the criterion. Uh, if the speakers can understand each other, even though with some difficulty, they are speaking the same language, although they may speak different dialects. So if people are able to understand each other, and though, some words might be different, or some slangs might be used, or some informal expressions might be used, but usually, if it is the dialect of a central language, then there would be quite a lot of overlap between the two. Okay, so languages are the standardized forms, while dialects are the different forms, various little minor variations that are restricted to regions or class groups of people or castes of people, but they're still considered to be forms of the main central language.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, actually, Mrs. Sukeshi Roy might have some doubt. She has raised her hand.
Uh,
So maybe take it now or later
we can
after.
take it later, I think.
Okay, ma'am, noted.
Yeah.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
will take it later. Please note down your questions and place in the chat box when we have question and answer session.
So, dialects are not just variations within a language, but they are often considered separate entities, each with its own rich history and cultural significance. So, it's not that we can relegate, dialects to be something unimportant or to be something of less importance. But, dialects also are considered separate entities. They have their own rich history and they have their own cultural significance, highlighting the complexity and diversity of linguistic expression. So, the dialects may change with the change in region. So a group of people living in certain geographical area may be using a particular dialect, but as we move on, we will find that there are variations in the language. However, the distinction between dialects and a different language can often be subjective, though it is the demarcation is not very clear. So the variations can occur due to geographical, social class, ethnic, or historical regions. So maybe due to change in the geographical area, maybe change in social class, or maybe an ethnicity, or for historical regions. So while all speakers of a language share the same basic grammar rules and vocabulary, those speaking different dialects might use unique words and slangs or have different pronunciations, highlighting the lack of an objective difference between dialects and languages. So, mostly the grammar rules and vocabulary are the same, but there might be certain unique words or certain slangs, and which also even the pronunciation might change, which indicates that it's very difficult to distinguish the dialect and the main language. So, you will find that, for example, the language of Jodhpur might vary with that of the language of Bharatpur. So the people of Jodhpur have a very kind of soft kind of vocabulary and a very distinct style of speaking. So you can recognize the people. If you are alert about the dialect, you would recognize the person who is from that area. Okay, so again, the basic language is Rajasthani, but variations due to geographical regions and due to class or ethnicity, they might occur. So language reflects the culture of a particular society, and culture is the product of socially and historically situated discourse communities created and shaped by language. So the culture is very well reflected by language. If we talk about, for example, when we talk about how do we depict the relationships in Hindi? So we have specific words for each relationship. For example, we have words like nana, nani, dada, dadi, mama, mami, okay, chacha, chachi, and each such relationship is very distinct. Yeah, it reflects the what kind of blood relationship it is. So I mean, a chacha would be very different from a mosa. Yes, I hope you can connect with what I am saying, that in India, in our language, in the languages in India, we have specific terms for specific relationships, whereas if we talk about English, then if you would know that all such relatives who are from the father's or mother's sides are called uncles or aunts. Yeah, we have added the terms maternal and paternal, but otherwise they just call them aunt or uncle. And especially, I mean, if you notice the word cousin, then what we say that the relationships we have for our siblings, for our sisters or brothers who are cousins, they have this term cousin, and they don't even include the word cousin brother or cousin sister. They just say, I mean, even if it's a boy or a girl, they say it's he or she is a cousin. So here in India, we have each word that we have carries its own significance and has its own kind of cultural dimension, which we may find missing in other languages. So Language is defined as a sum of beliefs and practices of society, and and the ideas and worldviews of society are determined by language. So it is language, which indicates the beliefs and practices of society. It is through language that we can understand them. And uh, I mean, the way people think and the way people, convey their thoughts, convey their ideas, the kind of philosophy they have, the kind of worldview they have is determined by the language that they are using. How they are able to express it, what kinds of words, what kind of specific choice of words do they use to express their views. So that is why it is very difficult. Translation is not an easy task, translating from one language to the other, because we may not have exact replicas for the words that we have in a particular language. So when we try to translate it, it is difficult, to find the exact replica, because that kind of word may not exist in the vocabulary of a particular language. So language is a system of science that has by itself a cultural value, and people identify themselves and others through language. So it is through our language that we identify ourselves, and that is why we have people, when people settle in other countries abroad, they have kinds of communities of their own region, where they're interacting with those people, because it is through their language, it is through their ethnicity that they connect with each other, and they try to maintain their culture and their religious practices, community practices, through this kind of relationship, which is again based in their ethnicity and their use of the basic language, the mother tongue that they are using. So in other words, they see language as a symbol of their social identity. It is language which identifies us, which helps us to mark our place in the society. Speakers see a prohibition of its use as a rejection of their social group and culture. So if we don't allow somebody to use their language, it is in a way a kind of rejection of their social group and culture. So thus there is a deep and intricate relationship between language and society. So how both of them are connected. So we come to this topic as to what is social linguistics. It's important because it is the study of relationship between language and society. Because as I was just discussing a few minutes ago, that language and society are interconnected, and it is through language that the cultural values of a society are reflected through the kind of terminology that has evolved for the different cultural practices that people are doing, or the kind of worldview they have, the kind of thought process they have. So it is a study of the relationship between language and social factors such as class, ethnicity, age, and sex. So how language varies according to the class of people, their ethnicity, their age, and sex. So I think all of us can relate that younger people will have a different way of speaking, while older people, their language changes as they mature, and their choice of words, their choice of expressions also changes. So how our social factors are reflected through our language. So social linguistics are interested in how people speak differently in varying social contexts, how people may perform specific functions of language to convey social meaning or aspects of different identities. So this is what social linguistics is. And social linguists, they focus on how people, according to the social context, how do people use language, and how they perform specific functions of language to convey social meaning or their different identities. So again, when you listen to people speaking, you will I mean, we feel a little surprised, because our way of speaking might be different from the people that we hear, when we listen to, for example, when we listen to students in our college. Okay, so they have a very different kind of vocabulary, different kind of slangs that they are using. So through their choice of words, through their choice of language, they reveal their identity, they reveal their age, and their even their thought processes. So what are the factors that affect social linguistics? The social background, the education of the people, their social class, their ethnic group. Okay, so that does deeply affect the choice of words and the use of language. The relationship between the speaker and the receiver. So as I was talking about earlier, language changes according to the relationship we have with the speaker has with the receiver. So we have a different way of speaking with friends, with family, with colleagues, with the employer, etc. And the context and the manner of interaction. So where are we using language, and how we are using, and what is the situation in which the act of communication is occurring. So talking informally would be very different. Talking informally at home or with friends would be very different from talking at a formal place, like for example a meeting, or at the office, or at the institute. So how the context and manner of speech changes according, it affects the use of language of the speaker. So some of the questions that social linguists investigate are: is language static or variable? So does language remain the same always, or does it change? How does it vary? To what extent are social factors responsible for language variation? So how do the social factors affect language, and how does it change gradually with the change in the social situation? How is it that people are able to communicate despite variation? So language has been evolving since it was created. And 10 years ago there wouldn't be lots of words which are now there in the dictionary. So we do keep reading in the newspaper that a few more words have been added to the dictionary. New words have come up, and they might have been adopted from other languages, but they are now part of the lexicon. So how is it that despite the changes in language, people are still able to communicate and able to understand each other? So the social linguistics also try to investigate whether standard languages are different from dialects. So are they different, and how far are the dialects different from the standard languages? And why should each social context be examined in its own right? So is social context so important that it should be considered as one of the major factors influencing language? Can language initiate social change? So does language have the power to bring about a change in society? So these are some of the major concerns of the social linguists. So social linguistics developed after Chomsky's prominent work in linguistics because his theory focused heavily on the universal innate aspects of language structure, largely ignoring the social and contextual factors that influence how language is used in different situations. So Chomsky theorized that there is a universal grammar, and everybody is equipped with that common universal grammar. But when he talked about this, it was the other critics in this field, they felt that Chomsky was ignoring the social and contextual factors, and how language changes according to that. So but social linguistics developed gradually after Chomsky's work, and that is why it is considered a meeting ground for linguists and social scientists. So it is not only linguists who are studying or researching in social linguists, but also social scientists. So they both help us to reflect on the nature of both language and society, and realize how in reality the relationship between the two is inextricably interwoven. So a social linguist examine the nature of language and society, and they try to see how both of them, society and language, they are inextricably interwoven, means they are deeply interconnected. Social linguists examine the variable nature of language. They believe that language is not a static entity but is dynamic. So they look at how language varies, it changes, how variation is caused in language. And they say that language is not a static entity, but it is dynamic, it changes. So variation may be due to a number of factors like geographical separation, sex, age, education, social class, caste, etc., or because of style and register differences. So lots of factors influence the choice, the changes in the language. And also it might change because of the style of speaking or writing and the register. So language can also vary according to the situation or the social context in which it is considered to be, of utmost importance in social linguistics. So again, as I was talking about, that it changes with the social context and with the situation. So when we say that India is linguistically very rich, it is because we have as many as 19,500 languages or dialects, which are spoken in India as mother tongues, and that shows that there is a great deal of diversity in India. But still, despite this diversity and linguistic variation, there seems to be some kind of underlying unity, some kind of uh, basic, connection, which enables communication to take place quite easily. It is not unusual for an individual in India to maintain multiple identities due to the multiple languages spoken by Indians. So we often have, command over more than one language, because we might be knowing the regional language of that region where we live. We might be knowing English and Hindi and other languages. So despite the diversity in India, I mean, we are able to connect with each other. We are able to communicate, though with might be a little difficult at times, but still. So social linguistics also, consider language as a marker of group solidarity and group identity. So, language in a way helps us to identify us with our group, and it helps us to give our identity in terms of the group which we belong to. So individuals create their identity in terms of the social group or groups they belong to. They share certain social and linguistic norms with the other members of the social group. So there is a sort of conformity to a social group. So in a way, we are part of a social group, and it is language which is helping us to, identify our solidarity with that group. Yet the uniqueness of each individual's experience of language and the society he or she belongs to enables him or her to fill uh, his or her experience of new situations, filter his or her experience of new situations in his or her own way. So though we conform to a particular social group, it is, I mean, each individual has unique experiences of language, and they are able to express their experiences or their own thoughts, their own situations in their own way. So I mean, language is still very flexible, that it can be used individually also, though it might reflect our solidarity with a particular group, help us to identify as part of a particular group of people. So there are two forces operating, one leading to similarities between individuals by conforming to a social group or groups and their norms, and the other leading to individual differences. So we might be identified as part of a group, but we are also individuals, and so through language we indicate our individual difference from others. So these forces are often referred to as conformity and individualism. So how far do we conform to the social group that we belong to, and how far we are able to express our individual thoughts and feelings, our individual points of view. It is through language that both of it is done. So the amount of variation between speakers within a social group depends on the relative strengths of these forces. So how, there is a difference between, there is a variation in the speech of people who might be part of a group, but then while they're conforming to the to the culture of the social group, they're also indicating their individuality. So it depends on how strong, these two forces are, conformity and individualism. So language is used as a tool of power in all spheres of social life, be it education, religion, media, administration, and so on. Language of the rich and the powerful is often made a standard variety at the cost of other varieties, which are in no way linguistically inferior. So it is not that the standard languages are they have all the best characteristics, but somehow language is the dialects are somehow not considered, not in a way recognized so clearly, and so that is why there is this issue, this, I mean, the concern of the social linguists as to consider the different variations of language equally important, and they are keen to bring about a social change in keeping with our social linguistic reality. So the multiple languages that India has, it's important that all the dialects and all the variations that are being used by people, they be preserved, and they be given equal significance, and also all means to be adopted to preserve them digitally and in through common use. So it is not that we consider only the standard languages important, but we also try to encourage people to use the dialects, and so that the dialects are also equally, they are they do not die out, they do not become extinct because of lack of use and lack of recognition. So the language that we use every day is remarkably varied. Uh, all languages have a considerable amount of internal variation, and we make constant use of the many options that we have with us. So we are using language in the ways that the best ways in which it can be used. We are using the different options that are available to us. So we all use different create different variations, and no one speaks the same way all the time. Recognition of variation implies that we understand that language is not just an abstract object of study, but something that evolves with use. So it is through variation that that language also evolves, and new words are coined, new phrases are coined, and some words or expressions become outdated. We stop using them, or they are considered to be archaic. And modern words keep coming into the lexicon or gradually become popular with the people. So dialectology is another important term. So the evolution of social linguistics begins with dialectology. The dialectologists were concerned with regional and social variation, how language varies according to region and society. So regional variation deals with regional dialects, which mark off the residents of one region from those of other regions. So regional dialects, they can be demarcated through people using those dialects who are living in a particular region. And when you look at the language, when you examine the language of people of nearby regions, you find that there is a change in the use of language. Social variation, on the other hand, deals with varieties associated with a specific social class or social status or caste. So language also changes with the class and the kind of the status that people hold, and how they are using language to indicate their status. So some research was conducted earlier on this field. In the latter part of the 19th century, some dialectologists like Jules Guillerin, George Wencker, Hans Kurath, and others attempted to write certain dialect forms either in dictionaries or on maps. So they tried to document the dialects that were being used. They mapped these dialects on a regional basis, showing that languages differentiate internally as speakers distance themselves from one another over time and space. So, they were able to prove, they were able to indicate that, languages, dialects change according to the change in region. And as people, as you move on from one place to another, as there is some distance, you see that, language varies between the groups of people. So they tried to indicate that it was through this that the creation of dialects takes place. Okay, so variations take place as we move across different regions. They tried to analyze speech variation and believe that speech communities are essentially heterogeneous. So they looked at speech variation, how speech varies, and that speech communities are heterogeneous. There are different, they are not similar. There is a lot of heterogeneity among the speech communities. We move on to social linguistics and the sociology of language. So, say social linguistics is a field that I just talked about. We also have this term called the sociology of language. So, social linguistics has two centers of gravity, two basic focus that are there, known as micro and macro social linguistics. Micro issues concern the linguistics aspects of society and are taken up by linguists, dialectologists, and others in language-centered fields. So when the researchers focus on the linguistic aspects of society, that is one aspect of social linguistics. When we look at the macro issues, they deal with understanding the social aspects of language and are of major concern to sociologists and social psychologists. So linguists focus on the linguistic aspects of society, while the sociologists look at the social aspects of language. So it is through this that there is this very subtle change between social linguistics and the sociology of language. So social linguistics is defined as the study of language in relation to society. Sociology of language is the study of society in relation to language. So, social linguistics investigates the relationship between language and society with the goal of understanding the structure of a language and how languages function in communication. How, languages are, they have their own structure, they have their own grammar, and how they function in communication. The goal of the sociology of language is to discover how social structures can be better understood through the study of language. So, sociology of languages focuses on society mainly, and how, language is used to indicate the social structures, how society is working as, and is in place. So we have this term language planning, which is important, especially in the sociology of language, although it operates both on the micro and macro levels. Uh, it has much to do with the society's deliberate intervention in the course of language development. So it involves dealing with the issues of standardization, status, prestige, and the allocation of functions of language in a society. And it is particularly important in multilingual countries where the government usually tries to direct the existence of multiple languages in a particular direction. So when the government tries to support the popularity and the kind of research and the kind of uh, development of particular of languages, so that they can, I mean, the support that is required is available to them. So it is a kind of it is mainly related to standardization and to how the government tries to make sure that languages are getting the kind of seriousness and the kind of attention that they need in order to be to evolve and to be popular and to remain in popular use, and that they are not relegated to a lower level due to lack of use. So moving on to the ethnography of communication. This is a term which was initiated by Del Hymes in the 1960s. So languages are being studied from a long time, and a lot of research has gone into the study of language. So ethnography of speaking or communication examines the role of language in the communicative conduct of communities. How communication, how language is used in diverse cultures. It examines the functions and uses of styles, dialects, and languages, and explores the way in which speech acts are interpreted and carried through in particular cultures and societies. How language continues is used by people, and how language is understood and carried forward and used in different cultures and societies. So it is actually a question of what a child internalizes about speaking beyond rules of grammar and dictionary while becoming a full-fledged member of its speech community. So how from the very childhood, children adopt languages, they absorb the use of language and internalize the language, and where they are not taught the rules from the very beginning, but they learn the language as they start speaking, and gradually the rules of grammar also are understood by them, so that they are speaking and writing mostly correct language, and gradually they become full-fledged members of its speech community. So this is what the ethnography of communication is, seeing how communities use language for communication, and how it naturally language is adopted and used by people, not through studying it and reading it and learning its rules, but only, I mean, basically through its use, not through a formal kind of education of that particular language. As we talk about variation, we discussed variation, how language varies and changes with geographical distances, and also with the change of region. A study was conducted in 1966 by William Leboff. This was called the social stratification of English in New York City, where William Leboff demonstrated the pronunciation of the R sound, the R sound, how it varies by social class. That he tried to see a connection between the pronunciation, how language is being used by people of different classes. So Leboff hypothesized that the pronunciation of R sound would vary by social class, with salespeople in higher ranked stores pronouncing it more frequently than those in lower ranked stores. So the people who were working, the people who were employed in higher ranked stores, they were pronouncing it more frequently. So it somehow demonstrated their social class, and it was being pronounced less by the people who were employed in lower ranked stores. So Lebov studied the speech of employees at 3 department stores in New York City. So he did it very, imperceptibly, not indicating that he was researching this, but he did it in such a way that people could not understand or realize that he was observing their pronunciation and trying to research it. So he observed the employees. He listened to the people speaking at the high end stores, and also the medium kind of store, and also the budget store. He asked employees to say fourth floor casually and then to repeat it more carefully. So he asked them directions, and so that they would say fourth floor, and how far they emphasize the use of the r sound. So he observed that generally the employees of the higher end store, they were emphasizing the r sound, while the employees working at the medium or at the budget store, they were emphasizing the r sound less. So Lebov found that the employees at Saks, the high-end store, pronounced the r most, while employees at Klein's, the budget store, pronounced it the least. Employees at Macy's, the middle-ranked store, showed the biggest shift in pronunciation when asked to repeat the answer. So the high-end store at Klein's, the employees were pronouncing the R sound most, and at the budget store, the people were pronouncing it the least. But at Macy's, when he asked them to repeat the answer, they tried to emphasize the use of the R sound, because they knew that it indicates their social class. So Lebov concluded that the pronunciation of r increased with greater care and emphasis, and the more careful the speech, the more likely the r was to be pronounced. So when he asked them to repeat it, when he asked them the directions again, they tried to emphasize the r. And so he also concluded that the use of r was a social differentiator in New York City speech. So it was through this sound that the different classes of people could be identified. And his study is considered a milestone in the emerging field of. So some researches which are quoted repeatedly, I'm mentioning them. So this study is considered a milestone in the emerging field of social linguistics. There was Peter Trudgell's study in Norwich. In the 1970s, Peter Trudgell studied Norwich speech, and to find out how and why people's ways of speaking varied. One of the variables Trudgell studied was the final consonant in words like walking, running, where this ing sound was there. In standard British English, the sound spelled ng is a velar nasal. So running, we say. So in walking, okay, talking is from the throat. In Norwich, however, the pronunciation walking, talking is frequently heard as if there was simply an n on the end. So the sound was not spoken, only n sound. So walking, talking was heard. So Trudgell notes that this feature is not unique to Norwich. So in standard British English, the sound that ringing sound is very much there. But he found that, in Norwich, the people were missing out the sound. They were only using the n sound in the end. So nearly everyone in the English-speaking world, we find this alternation between higher class formal and lower class informal n. So people of the higher classes were using the ringing sound, and in the words which had a continuous tense, and the people who were speaking at an informal level or of the lower social class, they were using the n sound at the end and not the ringing sound. So the types of variation, as we said that language varies according to the region or the personal factors or social factors. So the dialectologists tried to investigate regional variation at the levels of phonology and grammar, but they could not develop a comprehensive theory. It was difficult to theorize about how language changes at the level of phonology and grammar according to regional variation. The studies of Lebov and Trudgell deal with social variation and show how language varies according to social class and levels of formality. So people who are more formal will have a different way of speaking, while people who are speaking at an informal level, informal situation, they would speak in a different way. So Lebov has suggested that language variation leads to a process of language change. So as language varies, a process of language change also occurs as the low social class people become conscious of publicly legitimized prestigious variety. So gradually, people will try to adopt the style which is spoken by the, prestige people who are considered to be at a higher level or who are considered to be at a very prestigious level. So language variation in this way gradually, continuously happens. So this is what was theorized by Lebov and Trudgill. So it's an integral part of language, but it's a complex phenomena that is difficult to describe. So the languages that differ to a large extent from one another are generally mutually unintelligible, but the ones which have commonalities are generally mutually intelligible. So even there might be variation and there might be dialects which are evolving out of a standard language, but there are certain commonalities in the languages, so the languages are mutually intelligible. So it might be because they have a common lineage, so maybe they have been derived from the main standard language, or they have borrowed and lent words from each other extensively because of close proximity. Or sometimes, the words are being borrowed and used even from the local dialects which are being used in the nearby places, and so they become mutually intelligible. So Hindi and Urdu are similar and mutually comprehensible, even though they are said to be different languages. So we say that Hindi is different, Urdu is different. We have a different script for each of the language. But maybe the reason for the mutual intelligibility, and people will understand Hindi, people who speak Urdu will understand, mostly they will understand Hindi, and similarly most of the expressions we would be able to understand if people speak Urdu. But the reason for mutual intelligibility is the common ancestry. So maybe they were derived from a common language, and so there is this kind of overlap in the two languages. So language variation is categorized into the following types: geographical or regional variation, where people are separated geographically, leading to systematic linguistic diversity. So when, with geographical distance, there is a difference in the language, there is linguistic diversity. There might be social class variations, when people belonging to different socioeconomic class speak differently. There might be personal variation when language varies because of an individual's age and gender. So personally also, choice of language, it varies. And ethnic variation, when immigrant communities bring in features of their own ethnic background into the dominant language. So when people migrate from one place to another, they bring features of their own original, mother tongue into the dominant language. So this kind of variation is witnessed in America and in many other countries where there's a lot of immigration and people of other countries are coming and settling down. So any of these could be, at all these levels, the variation can occur. So when we talk about English, we are quick to identify a few countries where it is their mother tongue. So if we talk about English and, where it is used as a mother tongue, these countries, America, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, there in these countries, the English spoken it displays diversity, and these differences can be noticed in the way words are pronounced, and the use of vocabulary and grammar. So even though, English is a mother tongue of the people of all these countries, their ways of using it is very different. So if you go to Australia, it would be difficult, even though they are speaking English, their pronunciation is very typical, and you have to really pay attention to understand what they are saying, because the way they emphasize the letters and the way they pronounce the words is very different from the standard English that we are used to. So we can just look at some few examples: the American English, British English, and Australian English. So tomato, and this is in American English. Then tomato is in British English. American English, it's zebra. In British English, it's zebra. Then in American English, it's vitamin. They will say vitamin, while British English, they will say vitamin. So in American English, they say data, while in Australian English, they say data. The is very soft at the end. Play, what we say play is in British English is called play, but in Australian English it's called ply. So even though it's the same English that they're using, it varies with the region, it varies with the geographical location, and they have their own way of speaking, and they have their own kind of variation in the language, and which would be of course intelligible to others also, but a little difficult as compared to people of the same native region. So regional variation and geographical variation are terms often used interchangeably, but regional variation can also occur within a country. So language might, change within the same country. From one region to other, there would be variation in the language. The closer the regional boundary is, less likely the variation. But if there is less distance between the places, then maybe the variation will be less. But as the distance increases, language usually changes. So these variations are called dialects of a standard language. The systematic phonetic variations across regions help us to associate certain accents with a particular region. So how the phonetic variations change according to the regional use, we are able to thus associate certain accents with a particular region. Therefore, certain regional varieties come to be known as Banarsi Hindi or Lucknowi Hindi, and we are able to spot a speaker from areas that we are familiar with. So we will identify, because we have an ear for that kind of language, so we will understand. If we have that kind of understanding, we will be able to identify, what is his or her native place. So those regional varieties can be recognized with the use of accents, with the use of emphasis and stress. So all of us live in societies that are stratified into various classes based on the socioeconomic status. A number of research studies have shown that different social classes can be identified according to certain phonological and grammatical features that they use. And these linguistic differences between social classes have been seen to be fairly systematic, and these systematic differences are known as social class dialects. So dialects also change with social class, as we talked about Labov study or Trudgell study. So language varieties change according to, it has been researched and also proved that language change with the social classes of the people, and this is known as social class dialect. Besides the social factors that lead to variation, personal factors such as gender and age also result in language variation. Though English doesn't have a language variation based on gender, it's a known fact that men and women do speak differently. So variation occurs according to the different social situations or contexts in which a speaker finds himself or herself. So whatever context we are in, the language varies according to that, and this is called register. So what are the factors that determine register? The social occasion, the context, the purpose, the audience, the role, and the channel. How we are using language. Are we using it in the written medium, or are we speaking it out? Are we talking to children, or are we talking to specialized people of a specialized field? Okay, what is the context of the communication? Okay, what is the purpose of the communication? So how language changes according to that, this is known as register. For example, people might be more polite to strangers or more respectful to their boss at work. So when we talk to strangers, or when we are talking to our seniors in the workplace, then we are more formal, and the choice of words, the choice of expressions would also change according to the this kind of situation. So there is a specific term for this, which is called register. So in this way, language is molded according to the situation, is molded according to the purpose for which communication is being done. So the formality informality scale overlaps with another variable, namely the subject matter of the conversation. So it's not that the formality and informality only. Whether we are speaking on a formal occasion or informally, language also changes with the subject matter. So topics such as quantum physics and international economics are likely to produce linguistic varieties which are more formal than those used in discussions on cooking and on politics. So specialized fields where there is a distinct terminology and distinct kind of jargon, there the linguistic varieties would be very different and very formal as compared to informal discussions which might be taking place between people on topics such as cooking, or general conversations on politics. Moreover, the language of the various disciplines itself is different. So the language differs, the terminology differs, the context differs. The language of law is quite different from the language of medicine, which in turn is quite different from the language of engineering. So of course, the technical jargon that we are using in these specialized fields makes them very different, from the languages of other subjects. But to now make them accessible, uh, uh, for example, in the medical field, translations are being done in Hindi, so that otherwise medicine was studied only in English, and books and other study material was available, reference material was available only in English. So there were volumes and volumes of publications, but they were all in English. Either they were, written by foreign authors, or even if they were written in India, they were written in English, because that was the medium of teaching and learning medicine. But now in certain states, now they are being translated into Hindi, so that again, the field is more accessible to people who are not very comfortable with English, and they can, they are able to use their knowledge of medicine and communicate with people, with the common man, using a language which is intelligible to the common man, and not which is not English, of course. So however, even specialists in different disciplines, for example medicine, are required to simplify the use of technical terminology when communicating with the common man, to make themselves understood. So even, the language, the languages are different, the terminologies are different, but when they have to communicate with the common man, of course, they have to help the people, and so they have to adopt those words, they have to use those words which can, which the common person can understand, because their technical terminology will not be intelligible to the people who don't speak that much of, they don't have that much of understanding. Now, for example, any term, a term which is related to health has a specific nuance, and you cannot, define it using a word, an English word maybe. Okay, so languages, they are useful, when they are effectively, they are used to communicate. So if people are not able to understand the technical terminology, it's very difficult, for the communication to take place completely. So awareness of the dialects of a particular region thus facilitates communication. So when we are aware of, the variations in the use, and how people are, molding and adapting the language according to their culture, their situation, their society, that awareness, it helps us to facilitate our communication. So I think I spoke continuously for a long time. I think I will conclude here. I have included a lot of points, and I think it will give you some food for thought. But of course, the session is open to questions, and I will just conclude the presentation.
Wonderful deliberation, ma'am, and it has been a great learning experience for all of us here. And the way you have discussed the phonology and the methodology, and you discussed the theories in a very, it's a multi, because the participants are multidisciplinary, and you just make them understand what is the dialogue, and you kickstart this FDP. With this, I would like to ask the participants to raise their question. They can even they can type their question in a chat box, or they can raise their hand so we can unmute them. So one is saying very informative session, ma'am, and Raghavendra Sharma is saying that these days abusive words become so popular. So do we think that this is also part of dialects, or we can see that even when you see the digital media nowadays, ma'am, we see that language and terms become very common. This abusive language become very common. So it is also an after effect of dialect, or it become the mindset of the people, ma'am.
I think it's also personal choice, because not everybody is influenced by this kind of liberty. So I think it's also a personal choice. There are people who restrict, they don't use such abusive words because they feel it is not right. But then there are people who take the liberty of whatever language they want to. So I don't think it reflects the culture. It does indicate the personal choice. It varies from person to person.
Very true, ma'am. Please unmute Kalyani Puna. She has raised her hand. Ashish, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Kalyani Puna, you may ask your query. Kalyani, ma'am.
Ashi sir, allow me to ask a question to ma'am, if it is okay.
Yeah, sure, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Ma'am, good evening to you, and it's a nice experience to see you such a for such a lecture. My question is, how do you see the impact of AI on sociology of dialects actually? As we are adopting the new technologies day by day, in terms of the teaching and learning. So, what is your opinion about it? I mean, will it impact on the overall scenario of the dialects and the language, or will it change or will it be the same actually?
Um, I'm not very sure if it is accessible to everybody currently, but because it is currently available in English, I am not sure how much it is available in other regional languages. But I think it is enhancing the use of language. It is helpful in uh, you know uh, uh, in expanding our range of language. So it is not that dialects, I am not sure how they will be affected, because again, as I said, that in English, people can learn more through the help of AI. Yeah. So
Hmm.
when somebody is using AI, they get to know how to express language even better than what they normally can. But as far as dialects are concerned, I think it will take some time, to influence the dialects. Currently, I don't think it has evolved to such a stage.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the answer, ma'am. Thanks.
Yes.
Any other query? Ma'am, Miss Aishwarya Kumari is, want to ask, why is Miss, Mrs., Miss, 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 Mrs. So many salutations for female only, while male is only Mr. to use your input into it.
Yes, you are making us think, Ms. Aishwarya Kumari, because it is really, as I said, that there are certain practices which normally, I don't think would be acceptable. If you look at the current scenario, they wouldn't be acceptable. But I think gradually that will also change. So why is it that only women are they are attributed these salutations? That really is a question. I mean, I don't have any answer to it, but maybe it is not correct to do that. I think gradually we will become more sensitive and have a common kind of salutation for women as we have for men.
Aishwarya is also asking this question, ma'am, could it be the topic of research?
I think you will have to explore, whether research has been conducted on such aspects of language or not. So if you feel that it's such a detailed topic, maybe you could do so, but I'm not very sure. You'll have to just explore first.
Ma'am, I have one question. Like when we are talking about dialects and we are talking about India, because India is rich in dialects. So now, because the time has come and we see that language is now dying out. Every year we see that so many languages being dying out. So can we now use AI to restore these languages or these dialects? And the team of experts should be now, now the question is like people like us, we should think about the project should be taken up these dying languages and dialects can be restored by using the technical help or the AI, or you can say the technologies which are there, or the multi layer Perceptron which we are going to discuss. Please
Yes.
elaborate.
Yeah, it's a very important topic, very important suggestion. I mean, very important point that you have raised. It's very important. I mean, the new development of technology that should really contribute in helping us to preserve the dialects, because I mean, what society could not do till now, at least AI can help us in doing that. So I think also because the government is also granting a lot of projects to this kind of study, these kinds of studies and research, and also demarcating funds for digital preservation. So I think it is a concern. I mean, it is a matter of concern, and that is why at all levels we are devoting time and resources for this kind of preservation of the local languages. So I think it's a very important point, and your I mean this FDP itself is a indicator, a kind of proof of this fact. That the government is concerned about the languages that are somehow gradually dying out or becoming less and less in use. So it's a really matter of concern.
Thank you, ma'am. Kalyani has raised her hand.
Yes, please.
Kalyani, you can speak. We have just unmute her, Ashit, if you can.
Good evening, ma'am. This is Kalyani Punna.
Yes.
Ma'am, how can the language influence the people?
It depends on the situation. Language is a very powerful medium, and it is through language only that we are. I mean, whatever task we are doing, it is through language only that we are able to do it, and it is a way also of changing the society and motivating people, influencing people. I mean, the power of words is immeasurable.
See, sometimes the negative words may influence us more compared to the
Yes.
positive words.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I'm not sure whether they would influence us more, but yes, negative language also has its own kind of effect on people. But again, I mean, it's a very situational, it's very, what to say, subjective, because everybody may not be influenced by negative use of words. I mean, again, your personal values and personal point of view also matters a lot. So,
Okay, ma'am.
yeah, some people might be influenced, some may not be.
Okay, ma'am. According to the situations, they are going to move.
Situation and personal, kind of ethics that they have.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you so much, ma'am, for your informative session.
Thanks.
Ma'am, Dr. Priyanka Singh wants to ask what can be the right methodology to preserve language dialect?
Yes, I think, using it as far as possible, teaching the dialects to our younger generations, not switching to, the standard languages, but also trying to, mm, teach the dialects to I mean, the next generations. And also, if there is a written script, maybe publishing and writing more, because what happens that we have publications and publications in the standard languages, but very less publications in the regional languages or in the dialects. So if there is a proper written script, then publishing it and popularizing it and making sure that it reaches to people, I think that's important. And with the digital media, I mean, nowadays, we can communicate in major languages of the world, but I mean, these mediums, they focus on the international languages more than the local regional languages. So we have to take up this initiative of whoever has this capability or has this expertise, that dialects also can be in a way transcribed and communicated and used for communication, even through the digital medium.
Any other questions, participants? I hope, ma'am, the questions have been taken up very well by you, and this is really a very informative session. And we also know that these things need, like you say, that yes, government is also
Sorry,
very.
ma'am. I have one question.
Okay, Chancellor
Sorry.
has one question. No, no, please go ahead.
Yeah.
This is for
Yeah.
you only.
Hello, ma'am. Namaste, ma'am. Good
Yes,
to listen to you, ma'am.
yes, please.
So, ma'am, I would like to know, ma'am, how IITs are connected with this now, how IITs are looking towards this NEP's process of working on dialects, working on the national languages, how we can connect national language with English as English has been talked and treated as foreign language, and how we can connect Indian languages with foreign languages, how we are looking towards this, especially IITs.
Yes, I think it is through the development of courses also in these languages that the government is supporting these the use of these languages. So nowadays, even the massive open online courses, MOOCs, are being uh, recorded and produced for people even in the other languages. So though of course I belong to an NIT, so I cannot say very surely for IITs, but a lot of funding is going into this kind of propagation and popularization of languages, so that education is accessible, knowledge is accessible to people who may not be conversant with Hindi or with English. So I mean, we are encouraged, to help with translation, to help with recordings, preparing such courses, which can be accessed by people who are not, comfortable with the standardized languages. So I'm not
Ma'am,
very.
has NIT started any course, or has NIT developed any kind of a software for this?
I think they are working on it. Yeah, there is a lot of lots of projects have been granted to researchers in this field, and they are it's also computer science people. I mean, engineers from computer science department are also working on uh, languages, and their processing, and the different ways in which it can be digitally preserved and propagated.
Right, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. One more question, ma'am. As a person has already asked, probably a professor or a doctor. So, ma'am, how can we connect AI with languages? Nowadays, it's emerging, and if
Yeah.
students are like in a demand of this. So, being teachers, what is our duty towards this?
Towards languages, you're talking of dialects, or you're talking of improving
Ma'am,
their
like for
language?
example, we are teaching English.
Hmm.
So, how we can connect the English language, our regional languages, Sindhi, Punjabi, with
Hmm.
AI, and then to teach to the students?
I
How
think
can we
I,
make
I
it?
think I mean I think work is being done in this field also, and right now I am not very sure about other languages, but I think as AI has become very popular and is people are finding it to be very useful. I think it is being now being prepared in other languages also, so that it is of help to people of different, as you said, Sindhi or other Punjabi and other languages. I think it will be very soon we will find them as popular as the English, for example, Chat GPT. Yes. So, but
Yeah, thank you
I
so
think
much.
the people who are from computer science, I maybe there might be experts here also, so they would be able to answer your question better.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am,
Ma-
Dr. Priyanka again wants to ask how to give identity to a dialect.
Okay. So how to give identity to, as I said, that maybe writing more, publishing more, and I mean those who are familiar with the dialect or who are using it in their day-to-day use. So, and also teaching the younger children the dialects is very important, because people are switching over to the standardized languages like English and Hindi. So, and not letting the language die out, because it is not being formally taught or formally used. So to on our own individual level, we have to make efforts that that languages are recognized and are used and are as popular as they were earlier.
okay. With this, I hope there is no question and there is
And
so
ma'am,
much of.
I've also,
Okay,
pardon
actually,
ma'am for
there's one
interrupting you
question.
in between. Not a question, just a concern that languages somehow also, or dialects somehow also related to the heritage, culture, rituals.
Yes,
So preserving those also help in the enrichment of the dialects,
that is true.
our rich heritage.
That is very, very true. For example, the food culture, I mean, the food habits of a particular group of people, they are indicated through the choice of language only. There would be words which others may not be able to relate to, because it is used in that particular region. It signifies something, a certain kind of preparation, a certain kind of ingredient. Yes. Similarly, different traditions, there are certain words for certain traditions which we may remotely be familiar with, but we will not be able to understand as closely as a person who belongs to that regional group now, so the person who's using that dialect. So I think what you're saying is very important, that how culture and our traditions and our local customs, they are continued and preserved through the use of those dialects, which may not be, they cannot be, as I was talking about translation, you cannot translate it into another language, because there are no I mean words which can indicate those ideas or those objects or those traditions.
Yes.
So that's really true.
I hope we have finished with the question, and we will. Am I audible? No.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. From here,
I
I
want
want
every
everyone to switch on their camera one before the wait for the
wait
first
for the
technical
first technical
session.
session.
Ashish, sir, please take one photograph.
Yes, ma'am.
There is
There is one more
I have with
question I have
Kalyan.
with Kalyan.
Kalyan, you can,
Kalyan, you can
put
put it in the chat box.
We'll mail it to ma'am.
Done, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. And we see that so many research papers have come up with this wonderful one. I'm thinking about writing a paper on it. And Ashish has
Maybe there are two devices. There are two devices that are on, so there is an echo. Maybe we could switch off one. Yeah.
okay.
Yes, now it's fine.
Now is it audible? Is it okay? So this is another one. Session has given us so many avenues and so many ideas of the new research paper, and even the technical people who are here maybe just thinking that how this dialect can be helpful to generate new prototypes or the softwares or the application. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful session, and participants for listening to us. And we will join us at 8 o'clock sharp for the second technical session. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, participants. Thank you, Ashish, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for being there.
Thank you
all
so
this
much,
while.
ma'am, for sparing certain
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Welcome. I'll take your leave now.
Thank you. Yes,
Sure,
ma'am.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Participants, please be remain connected with us as we are going to start second session around 8.